Did you know that having the right tools can make or break your sewing experience? It can. Let's discover the essential tools that every beginner should have. Hi, my name is Annie, and this is Historically Fashioned. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Thanks for hanging out with me again. Um, in today's video, we're going to be talking about the 10 essential tools that I think you need to start sewing your own clothes. If you have these, it should help ensure that you have everything at your fingertips for a successful project. Now, some of these things can be purchased. Some of these things you have to bring within yourself to your sewing space. So many new sewists really struggle with finding which tools are truly necessary to be successful in sewing. There's so many things on the market that it can often be frustrating trying to find things that work for you. You can waste time, you can waste energy, you can waste money. And that can ultimately lead to you not enjoying the process of sewing and giving up. So I don't want anyone to give up sewing. I think sewing is, for me, my happy place. It is where I am creative. I can't draw. I can't play music. I sing badly. So this is where I create my my creations, my art, so to speak. Um, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. I've got my notes here in front of me. Um, and I've got some other things in front of and around me. So hopefully I don't forget anything. Some of these things I have touched on in the past, so I'm not going to go too into depth. But let's start with item number one, and that is a sewing machine. Now, obviously, you can sew without a sewing machine. I've talked about this before. It just takes an awful lot of time, awful lot of patience, neither of which I have in abundance. So for me, a sewing machine is absolutely key. Now, we've talked about this before about not needing a fancy modern machine. Of course, you can purchase one if that's what you want. There are some very good entry-level new machines. Brother makes some good ones. Singer makes, I've heard the Singer Heavy Duty is quite good. So you can definitely go that route. Now, I prefer a vintage machine. I have several new machines and many vintage machines, and I much prefer my vintage machines. Behind me, I have my current favorite, which is my Elna SU. This one does everything I need it to do. Sews a beautiful straight stitch. It sews a great zigzag stitch, a lightning stitch. It's got cams for different decorative stitches. It even makes little duckies. Um, and it sews a mean no-turn buttonhole. So a good sewing machine is absolutely key. You do not need to spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on a good machine. You can often pick up a used one on Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes they're just giving them away. So I, again, advise a vintage machine. You can service them at home. There's no computers to worry about, and the gears are metal, so they will last you a lifetime. That is tool number one that you absolutely need to have. Tool number two that you must have when you start sewing is a good iron. Now, I have had very inexpensive irons. I had a Sunbeam iron that I picked up at Kmart back in the day. That thing lasted forever. It was a great iron. It never leaked. It was wonderful. I think it cost me like 15 bucks back in the day. Really, really good iron, made steam, the whole gamut. Now I had a Rowenta iron. Thought, ooh, I'm going to upgrade. I got a Rowenta. Thing cost me about 100 bucks. I had it for 2 months and it started leaking. I was displeased to say the least. My current iron is this bad boy here. So this is a gravity fed iron. If you're going to splurge on one thing in your sewing room, I think it should be your iron, not your sewing machine. This one actually cost me about the same as that Rowenta. It was about 100 bucks when I bought it. I think they're going for about 125 now. But this thing is a professional iron. It's heavy. It makes a whole lot of steam. So it's a gravity feed iron. So what that means is it has a tank that's hanging actually up here. And the water, feeds down through the tube into the iron itself. It never leaks. It never spits. It It is the most reliable iron I have ever had. I've had this guy for about 2 years now. I absolutely love this iron. Like I said, it's heavy. You will get a workout, but I have never, ever had fabric flatter than with this iron. Now, the reason you need a good iron is that sewing, contrary to what you may think, is mostly ironing. It's mostly pressing. If you want your garments to look beautiful and not homemade, you want them to look handmade instead, pressing is your best friend. In order to get a good press, you need an iron that is reliable and going to do the job. So, again, I recommend a gravity feed iron just because that is what I have found the most success with. But a cheap iron, a sunbeam, like I said, that sunbeam lasted me for forever. If I had it before I even started sewing, the thing lasted forever. But I upgraded, and again, if you're going to splurge on something, this is the thing you should splurge on. Number 3. So you're going to need, as a beginner, at least one really good sewing pattern. What I mean by this is, these days, we don't have home ec in school in the States. Not anymore. Many of us are learning to sew on our own using YouTube, using blogs, maybe books, which we'll get to in a minute. But a good sewing pattern can be your best friend when you're starting to sew. So, what I mean by that is you want something that has clear direction, that is going to walk you through things when you're new and not assume that you have all of this knowledge. Some of the, you know, big commercial patterns, they don't always give you every step because they assume that you know when to understitch. They assume that you know which direction you should press your seams or how to finish your seams. So finding a good sewing pattern that will walk you through all of those steps, when to do them, how to do them, and why you do them is really, really important. As far as modern sewing patterns go, Closet Core has some great patterns with very detailed instructions. They also have video sew-alongs, which are super helpful when you're a beginner. Tilly and the Buttons, if you enjoy her designs, a little boxy for me on the most part, but her instructions are really, really great. If you are looking for vintage patterns, I recommend Charm. They are fantastic. The Charm patterns from the Charm website, not her Patreon patterns, but from the Charm website, they come with really, really great instructions that will walk you through every step, tell you how to do things. There are often sew-alongs for hers as well. If you're looking to do historical costuming and you're starting in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, might I suggest Margot Anderson? They are, her patterns are what I started with. Just so you kind of know what I'm looking at here, let me pick up this big old binder if I can. Oh, it's very heavy. So this is my Margot Anderson Complete Ladies Wardrobe pattern. This thing is massive. Now, she doesn't sell them like this anymore. I purchased this close to 20 years ago, maybe about 20 years ago. So it's not sold all in a bundle like this anymore. When I purchased this, this was the complete pattern. But the thing about Margot's patterns is she has very, very, very detailed instructions. So she walks you through how to do everything. So for this particular, group of patterns, this particular one is, this is the underpinnings. So with this pattern, I was able to make my Elizabethan, dress from the skin out. So the shift, the stays, the farthingale, the bum roll, everything. And then after I finished those things, I moved on. Oh, this is the accessories package in here as well. But then I also have the complete wardrobe as well that has you know, how to make all of the actual like outer garments. So she walks you through everything here. She gives you historic techniques, she gives you modern techniques. So I highly recommend Margot's patterns for, you know, Henrican, Tudor, Elizabethan. Fantastic, fantastic patterns. So yes, a good pattern to start with. Once you've had success with that, you know, you can build on your initial success, either using, you know, the same pattern company and continue to build there, or branch out into other pattern companies. The more confident you get, then you can move on to things like Style Arc, which maybe have very brief instructions, some of which are very, very odd. But yes, good pattern. Start with a good pattern. Of course, you need fabric. Now, fabric, I admit, I've said it before, I am a fabric snob. I cannot deny it. I pretty much only sew with natural fibers or natural man made fibers. What I mean by that is things like rayon, which are cellulose based fabrics, but they are man made, meaning they didn't grow like cotton, or they weren't produced by a sheep or a silkworm or something like that. So, yes, I suggest cotton as a beginner. It is the easiest to handle fabric that there is. It's hard to mess it up. It usually stays put where you want it to stay put, and you can pick it up relatively inexpensive. You do not have to drop hundreds of dollars on fabric for your first projects. You just don't need to do it. You can pick things up at the thrift store. You can buy inexpensive quilting cotton. Right now, what we're doing is sewing some garments that you can get your feet wet, you can wear, and you're going to use some fabric that is fairly forgiving, because you're going to make mistakes and you're going to need to unpick. And cotton is one of the easiest fabrics to unpick. You want something with an even weave, nothing too slippery, nothing too squidgy that wants to move around on you. So, yes, fabric is number 4. Number 5, you're going to need at least one measuring tape and a ruler. So, I have multiple measuring tapes. Now, here's the thing about measuring tapes. These things can stretch out. So, a couple things you need to remember when using your measuring tape. Number 1, you should always use the same measuring tape throughout the entire project that you're currently working on. It's okay if you have multiples. I have many measuring tapes that are kicking around my sewing room, that are living in my sewing baskets, things like that. I have a lot of them. This one happens to be my favorite because it doesn't matter which end I pick it up at. Um, there's a 1 on that. What I mean by that is, let's see. You can see here, I don't know if you can, but both ends start at 1. So on one side, it's just inches. The other side has inches and centimeters. So it doesn't matter which end I pick up, I'm always going to start at 1 and not have a problem, which for me is important. That's just the way I am. But again, these can stretch out. So if I were to use this measuring tape to take my measurements, I use this one all the time, and then I picked up another measuring tape and measure myself, I might get different measurements. Now, another important thing is every so often you want to take your ruler. You want plastic or metal for this because wood can warp and it can also change size. So a plastic or a metal ruler, and you just want to measure your measuring tape. I know that sounds silly, but you want to be sure that 1 inch is actually 1 inch because it can get off. Now, not a huge problem, really, in sewing as long as you're using the same measuring tape. Where you can wind up with a problem is if you use a measuring tape that has stretched out, you take your measurements, and then you use another measuring tape and you take your measurements again, you're going to get 2 different measurements, right? Which one do you use? So always use the same measuring tape and measure it every once in a while to make sure that it is actually the size it should be. Moving on. You need your, I'm going to kind of lump these all together, your essential sewing notions. So, what I mean by that, you need to have marking tools, you need to have pins, fabric shears, seam rippers, thread. These things are all essentials that you got to have. If you don't have them, you can't sew. Um, so yeah, a good seam ripper is key. You want it nice and sharp. I'm sure you probably have heard the adage, a dull knife, you're going to cut yourself. Uh, you're more likely to cut yourself than with a sharp knife. Same thing goes with seam ripper. You are more likely to cut your fabric with a dull seam ripper than you are with a sharp one. So, seam ripper, marking tools, pins, fabric shears that you only use for fabric. Only for fabric. Do not cut paper. Do not let anyone else cut paper. Just fabric. Number 7, you're going to need some hand sewing tools as well. You're going to need needles. My preferred are size 10s. I like the sharps, or sometimes the embroidery needles because they have a bigger eye. And you're going to need a good thimble. Got my thimble on here. I prefer these open top thimbles. I think they're the most comfortable. Sometimes I forget they're on. I go to wash my hands and I'm like, oh, I've got a thimble on my hand. One day I actually left for work with this on my finger. So you're going to need those as well. And then a good sewing book. Now, I know the internet is free. There's a lot of resources out there that are free, but I find having a good sewing book to hand is really, really, really nice when I just want to look something up really quickly. I'm in the middle of something. I don't want to pull out my phone. I don't know. I'm a book person, so I do like a good sewing book. I have a few here. The one that I would recommend to every beginner is the New Complete Sewing Guide from Reader's Digest. This is the one I have. I'm sure they have updated it since I have had this one, but I have had this one for a very long time. This is a classic. It goes, again, through everything you need to know. It talks about stitches, seams, seam finishes, how to notch a curve. In fact, oh look, there we are right there. How to sew a dart. This is a fantastic sewing book. If you only ever purchase one sewing book in your life, I really recommend this. Now, I also, enjoying sewing vintage items. I also recommend any of really Gertie's sewing pattern books. She has great sections in these that include basic vintage techniques on how to sew. This particular one actually even has some basics on how to alter a pattern to get a different look, which I think is great. So any of her books I think are fantastic. They are great for, it's got everything, how to insert a zipper, how to do buttons, all of that stuff. So these are great. If you enjoy sewing like Victorian items, which I love Victorian sewing. This one is great. This is the Authentic Victorian Dressmaking Techniques. This one's edited by Christina Harris. So this is basically, it's got a section on how to adapt patterns. It's got basic stitches, how to sew things like a shirt waist with tucks. Now, these all come from Butterick. All of the instructions in this book are Butterick. They, I believe, were originally published, I'm thinking here, in the Delineator magazine. There was a whole series of these things. So they've been taken out of the Delineator and compiled into this book. I have a whole collection of Delineators, and I love those old magazines. But I also have this vintage Butterick sewing manual. A Ready, Set, Sew. This is actually a really, really great one. Again, this is from Butterick. This one was published in 1971, so it is definitely true vintage. I believe it belonged to my mom, and now it is mine. Again, this is great. It has a lot of great things on how to do some hand sewing, how to handle different types of fabrics. This one's about lingerie fabrics, bonded fabrics, permanent press fabrics. It's really, really a great resource if you can get your hands on it. Moving right along, because this video is getting way longer than I wanted to, we are going to talk about number 9. Now, this is something you cannot buy in the store. This is something you need to bring in for your own self. You need patience. It is going to take time to learn how to do all of these things. But there is no reason you should not be able to successfully complete your first garment. You just have to be patient with yourself. You have to know that you're gonna make mistakes. And that's fine. We all do. Even people who have been sewing for decades and decades make mistakes. It happens. These things happen, as Carlotta says, right? Um, yeah, so you're gonna make mistakes. So you need to be patient. You need to make sure that you're thoroughly understanding the direction that is in front of you. And it's also really important to understand why you're doing something. If you understand the why and the how, then as you gain confidence, you can kind of step away from those rules and make your own rules. That is totally fine. And then the last thing I think that you absolutely must bring into your sewing space is you need some unending enthusiasm and you need a positive attitude. Um, these are the things that are really going to see you through your sewing journey to the end of that first project. You need to pick a fabric that you like the look of. Even if it's cheap, it doesn't mean it has to be ugly, right? You don't have to go with a plain fabric. Pick something fun. Pick something that excites you. Pick a pattern that excites you. Don't go for a boring a dress or a boring shirt that you're not really interested in sewing. Choose something that really, really excites you, and you will never, ever have a problem with that enthusiasm when you make the inevitable mistake. So, that is absolutely everything that I have today. Those are what I believe the 10 essential tools that you need for your first sewing success. So if you found this video interesting, I'd love it if you would stick around. Go ahead and hit that like button and hit subscribe to see more videos like this, as well as some other things I've got coming up. I am actually working on a sew along for the dress that I'm wearing, which is the Style Arc Bell woven dress. I absolutely adore this dress. The pattern is beautiful. The instructions, not so much. So I thought I would put together a little sew along showing you how I do things because, yeah, those instructions are weird. Do not start with that dress unless you find a really good sew along to help you with that one. Anyhow, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Like I said, if you did enjoy today's video, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. You can sometimes find me over on Instagram at Historically Fashioned. And yeah, if you'd like to watch another video of mine, go ahead and check out this one wherever it happens to be placed on the screen. And I will see you guys next time. Until then, have a fabulous day and don't forget to create something beautiful. Bye.